Greetings and welcome back to LA Quill. Today we're diving into something every fantasy writer faces sooner or later, whether they're working on their first book or their 15th. The moment when you've rewritten and revised and edited and polished and perfected, and still find yourself hovering over your manuscript with that itch to tinker just a little bit more. This is where the third rule of writing comes into play: knowing when to stop. There comes a point in every writer's journey, especially in fantasy where worlds sprawl wide and magic systems grow ever more elaborate, where the story is finished, but the writer isn't ready to accept that. Maybe you've sculpted kingdoms or named mountains, crafted family lineages spanning generations, or built an entire magical ecosystem that feels as real as your own backyard. You've spent months, maybe years, breathing life into this world. So how could it possibly be done when it feels like there's always one more detail to refine? Just one little one. Let's be honest. Fantasy invites obsession. Our stories are bigger, our casts are larger, and our world building is deep enough to drown in if we don't come up for air. And because we work on such epic scales, we convince ourselves that there's always something more we could fix. One more pass to strengthen that character arc. One more tweak to the magic system. One more polish on that dialogue exchange in Chapter 14 where your grumpy ranger suddenly decides to be emotionally unavailable for 5 seconds and now you're not sure if it works. But here's the heart of the problem. The pursuit of perfection is endless. Perfection becomes a mirage in the desert, always shimmering in the distance, always out of reach, and always convincing you that you need to take just one more step to finally get there. This is the trap that steals years from writers. This is the loop that stops manuscripts from ever seeing daylight. So there's no such thing as a perfect novel. It doesn't exist. Not at all. And that truth is even sharper in fantasy. Our novels rely on imagination, and imagination has no ceiling. You could revise for the rest of your life and still find something to tweak. You'll find a new idea that sparks inspiration, or a different world-building detail that suddenly feels clever, or an elegant piece of dialogue you didn't think of until your 20th read-through. But the problem isn't the ideas. Writers are supposed to have ideas, that's the point. The problem is the feeling that you can't let go until everything is flawless. And that feeling, while understandable, is the enemy of finishing. It's the enemy of publishing. It's the enemy of growth. Here's what most aspiring writers don't realize. Letting go is a skill. It's something you practice. It's something you learn through repetition. It's something that becomes easier every time you write a new book. The first time you do it, you'll feel like you're pushing your beloved manuscript off a cliff and praying it sprouts wings before it hits the ground. But the more you practice submitting and publishing and sharing your work, the more you realize that letting go isn't abandonment, it's evolution. At some point, every story reaches a stage where additional edits don't improve it. They only change it. And that's the line writers need to understand. Improvement is finite. Alteration is infinite. If you keep tinkering past the point of diminishing returns, you're not helping your book anymore, you're just reshuffling the furniture to no end. Think of it like tending a garden, which if you're a fantasy writer, you know is a metaphor that only ever grows. The early drafts are the planting of seeds. Revisions are watering and weeding. Editing is carefully trimming the branches. But eventually you have to stop pruning. If you cut the rose bush 27 times in an attempt to create the perfect shape, you're not improving it, you're stunting it. You're taking away its ability to bloom. Part of what makes fantasy writing so uniquely vulnerable to endless tinkering is the sheer scale. When we write in our genre, we're not just telling a story, we're curating an entire reality. And that reality will never feel big enough or deep enough or polished enough to satisfy the imagination that created it. Writers know the hidden histories that will never make the page. We know the magical rules that only get half explained. We know the characters' childhood traumas that influence their arc, even if they're never stated outright. And because we know all the invisible depths, we sometimes panic when we realize readers will only experience the surface layer. But that's exactly how it's supposed to be. Readers don't need the entire iceberg, only the part that holds up the story. The rest still exists for you, the author, to give your world weight and credibility. Trying to cram it all into one novel does nothing but bloat the narrative and drown the pacing. Trying to perfect the book by adding more depth or clarification only risks over-explaining the magic or poisoning the mystery that makes fantasy so enchanting in the first place. So how do you know when it's time to stop? Not emotionally. Emotionally, you will never feel ready. That's the terrible truth. Your heart will whisper that you need one more pass or one more scene or one more rewrite. But logically, there are signs. Clear signs if you're willing to see them. First, if your revisions stop solving problems and start rearranging elements that were already working, you're done. Changing "she whispered" to "she murmured" and then changing it back a week later is not productive editing, and it doesn't matter. It's procrastination disguised as progress. Second, if beta readers are consistently telling you that the story is ready, or worse, if you're ignoring compliments because you can only focus on imagined flaws, it's time to step away. When your trusted readers are more confident about your manuscript than you are, that's a signal. Third, if the story on the page matches the story you intend to tell, even if it doesn't perfectly match the fantasy in your head, you've reached the finish line. And that finish line matters far more than perfection ever will. Because here's something every writer eventually learns. Perfect books don't get published. Finished books do. The third rule of writing is simply to know when to stop. It's simple to say and fiendishly difficult to practice, but it's also essential. If your manuscript is publishable, or as close to publishable as you can reasonably make it, then it's time. Time to step away, time to trust the work you've done, time to release your story into the world. And yes, it will feel like pushing your baby out of the nest. It's supposed to. But that's how every book learns to fly. There's another layer to this conversation that fantasy authors in particular need to hear. Your readers want more stories from you, not endless revisions of the same one. If you stay trapped in perfectionism, you rob yourself of the opportunity to write your next great book. That incredible idea you've had simmering in your imagination for the past year, it deserves attention too. It deserves creation. It deserves to exist, but it can't not until you let your current novel go. Fantasy readers crave worlds and series and mythologies. They want to explore everything you can dream up. They want to follow you from one kingdom to another, from one arcane mystery to the next. Your career is built not on one perfect book, but on the collection of stories that grow as you grow. And here's a secret most seasoned fantasy authors will tell you. Your favorite book won't be the one you perfected. It'll be the one you finished, despite your doubts. Because finishing is what forges a writer. Finishing is what teaches you discipline and confidence and trust in your own process. Finishing is what allows your voice to mature between one project and the next. So if you're sitting at your desk right now, cursor blinking accusingly at you, asking whether you really need to read your manuscript for the 100th time, ask yourself this instead. Has the story fulfilled its purpose? Have the characters completed their arcs? Is the plot coherent, compelling, and true to the heart of the tale you wanted to tell? If the answer is yes, even if it's a hesitant yes, then it's time. Step away. Seal the document. Call it finished. The moment you accept that your book is done, something freeing happens. The pressure dissolves. The perfectionism loosens its grip. The world you created stops feeling like a burden and becomes a triumph again. And suddenly you're ready to write your next story. But the third rule doesn't just help you finish books. It helps you grow as an author. When you learn when to stop, You stop clinging to old stories out of fear. You start moving boldly into new creative territory. And fantasy writing thrives on boldness. It thrives on the willingness to explore uncharted realms, to experiment with magic systems, to reimagine tropes, and to chase ideas that feel too wild, too complicated, or too ambitious. Letting go of your book isn't about abandoning it. It's about trusting it. Trusting that it's ready. Trusting that your readers will connect with it. Trusting that you've done the work. And now it's time to do the next work. Your story is not perfect, but it is powerful. And power is what readers remember. So take a deep breath. Save the file. Close the document. And let your book take its first flight into the world beyond your desk. And that's our tale from LA Quill today. What part of the writing process do you struggle most to let go of? Drafting, revising, or is it the tinkering? Until next time, may your stories always be magical.